The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Chuck Stevens, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the Wednesday, March 25th issue of the Niagara Falls Review, right here on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Network. Our first story, rents are probably going to continue to come down, supply outpacing demand as the region's population grows. As rental prices across the country continue to fall, the latest report from rentals.ca suggests Niagara's three largest markets are reflecting similar trends. Larger rental units in Niagara Falls did see the steepest yearly decline in February. Niagara Falls one-bedroom rentals dropped nearly 8% year over year to $1,615 per month, while two-bedroom rentals fell nearly 9.5% to $1,936 per month. St. Catharines one-bedroom rents increased nearly $20 from January, but dropped 1.8% year over year to end February at $1,626 per month. Two-bedroom rentals fell overall by 2.7%, ending at $1,937 per month. Welland's one-bedroom rents declined 6.5% to $1,546 per month. Overall, Niagara's rents are down 4.4% year over year, averaging about $1,812 per month, compared to the national monthly average of $2,030. Even the most expensive area in Niagara right now is still about $100 less than the national average, said Giacomo Lattis, Rentals.ca Associate Director of Communications. More recently, Niagara Falls rents have seen greater monthly and yearly declines. Lattis attributed that to vacancy rates, more rentals, fewer renters. There's a decline in work permit holders. We're seeing a lot of permits expiring and not renewed. And Niagara Falls relies strongly on temporary foreign workers, he said. We're just seeing demand slow down a little bit more in Niagara Falls, as well as a lot more supply coming in. Also, as people continue to work from home, Lattis said they're moving from larger cities like Niagara Falls into smaller, cheaper communities, leaving larger cities with more vacancies. What many secondary markets are seeing, Lattis said, is a rise in two-bedroom rents as demand outpaces supply. Welland is not the only outlier, he said. There are many secondary markets across Ontario seeing those two-bedroom year-over-year increases, and then, in general, it's more affordable than the other areas across Niagara. So that's always going to bring demand up. Meanwhile, with higher vacancy rates for some rental types, providers are looking at offering more incentives to attract and keep tenants, Lattis said. We're looking at a pretty prolonged renters market, at least for 2026, where prices are probably going to continue to come down. Move-in incentives are here, such as 2 months free rent and a lot more choice, he said. You ask anybody who lives in Niagara, there's a lot of new builds, lots of cranes going up, and a lot of building permits, and that's good for a renter. Lattis said these factors combined create stability as Niagara's population booms. There's a lot of new homes and rentals built to match that increase of demand. Because of that, we're seeing still, even with all this population growth here, rental prices being below the average. That's a good sign for people in the Niagara region. Our next story, competition for vacant Bay store at Penn Centre. While the vast majority of former Hudson Bay storefronts across Canada sit quietly empty, the two-story retail unit inside Niagara Penn Centre has become a rare commodity, attracting a surge of interest that caught even its owners by surprise, and turning the HBC vacancy into a competitive race for the space. It was probably more demand than we've experienced anywhere, said Henry Zaravev, chief executive officer. It allowed us to be selective in who we want to place in there. The St. Catharines Shopping Center is in the final stages of negotiations with at least 4 potential tenants, with others waiting in the wings. While some minor changes have been made, the former HBC site is slated for significant redevelopment, with construction anticipated to begin in coming months and continue into 2027. Tenants are expected to move in by early 2028. It's going to be a pretty significant project. There will be changes to the existing property, but we're trying as much as possible to keep what's existing. Last July, Leand, a Montreal-based real estate firm, announced its $140 million purchase of Niagara's largest shopping center, a 102,190 square meter acquisition that came just weeks after Hudson Bay's shuttered its doors. On March 7, 2025, the 355-year-old Canadian company filed for creditor protection, resulting in the closure of 80 stores across the country. In a recent analysis, the Canadian Press said at least 73 former Hudson Bay or Saks Fifth Avenue stores remain empty. 14 of those properties were taken over by YM Incorporated brands of Urban Behavior and Urban Planet. At Penn Center, Urban Planet in November moved into the former Bay space temporarily. Zaravev said the move was a quick solution to provide immediate offerings to shoppers until the ad's long-term multi-tenant vision is finalized. Zaravev said future tenants will include those that offer a combination of entertainment, non-fashion retail, and other options lacking at the mall. He said the ability to diversify is due to the competition for the retail space. Instead of filling out of necessity, the Penn Center is able to choose tenants that most want to be there, and operators it believes will be creative enough in their retail experience to continue bringing back shoppers, something the community wants to go to. Our goal is you can go to the Penn Center and you can spend a few hours there doing your shopping, but also having fun to be able to service all of someone's shopping and entertainment needs in one place. After acquiring the mall and its sizable property, a combined 260,130 square meters, Liad said its primary focus was on the mall's long-term success, investing in a retail space that now exceeds 8 million visits. While there is potential for residential development on the mall property, the prime concern has been the vacant Hudson Bay storefront. Once that's done, we'll start to look at other aspects of the mall, but that's really been our priority, Zariev said. Our belief in retail and the shopping mall experience is fully unwavering. If anything, it's just been re-solidified over the last 9 months. He said Liad has spent time listening and responding to the community because without local support, we aren't going to be successful. It believes Niagara will appreciate changes to the Hudson Bay space while continuing to be open to feedback. There's a lot of positive momentum that we should be able to build on. The monthly visitor counts and everything else should be trekking up slowly at a steady pace, he said. We've been a very happy steward of the property, and we're excited for what's to come. Now, the Penn Center opened in 1957 as Niagara Peninsula Center, a single-level open-air strip mall. In 1975, it was fully enclosed. In 2011, it underwent a $13 million makeover that included a revamped food court. After Sears closed in 2018, the space was reworked into 2 larger storefronts alongside several smaller shops. Next up, room for growth on Seaway as shipping season begins. Captain Paul Easton receives first top hat as officials highlight the potential to double cargo traffic. After a long and difficult winter, the St. Lawrence Seaway set sail into its 68th navigation season this week. The second of Niagara's 2 top hat ceremonies was held Tuesday morning at St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Center as Northern Venture, a 154-meter-long self-discharging bulk carrier, was moored nearby in Lock 3. It was the first upbound ship of the season to pass through the canal. Its captain, Paul Easton, who attended the ceremony with the ship's chief engineer, Jacob Jones, said his crew of about 18 were bound for the export terminal at the former Robin Hill Mill in Port Colborne to pick up a load of grain to deliver to Toledo, Ohio. It was the first time the 36-year-old was awarded a top hat after 18 years of sailing, including 4 as a ship's captain. "Wow, what a ceremony," Easton said. "A couple of my colleagues who are captains with McHale Marine have 2 or 3 top hats, but this is the first one for me," he said. "I didn't think it would be like this, but it's pretty cool. Very nice, and we're very privileged." Darcy Wilson, St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation Vice President of Operations, said despite global market uncertainty, the amount of cargo that passed through the waterway last season remained consistent at 37 million tons. This speaks to the reliability of the Seaway, which doesn't happen by accident, he said. Our reliability comes from consistent investments with our reliable partners, Transport Canada, and the professionalism of the Seaway employees. He said those workers kept operations running safely and reliably day after day. They also completed engineering and maintenance projects while the Seaway was closed for the winter, working with local contractors and companies to get upgrades done, with the benefits flowing back into the Niagara region. Niagara understands the value of trade along the Seaway, from cargo tonnage to marine-focused economic development on federal lands along the canal, Wilson said. While there are big numbers being shipped through the waterway, Wilson said there's a potential to ship far more. Moving more goods on the water can help ease congestion on busy Ontario highways and rail networks. Wilson said a single ship can carry the equivalent of 301 rail cars or 963 transport trucks. We're proud of our history and have an eye on the future, he said, adding the Seaway is working to extend its navigation season and support the transportation of containers and Canadian energy. Mayor Matt Cisco called the canal an important part of who we are. As St. Catharines celebrates its 150th anniversary, he said, the canal that was already nearly 50 years old when the city was incorporated helped shape our local economy in those early years, and it continues to connect North America's industrial heartland to global markets today. Cisco, co-chair of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Seaway Cities Initiative, said there is still important work ahead. There's a real opportunity for Canadian and American partners to continue working together to strengthen this corridor to build on the enormous economic potential of the Great Lakes and the Seaway, he said. McKeel Marine President Scott Bravener said the Top Hat ceremony celebrates not only the return of shipping, but the return of momentum in communities and industries across our region and across Canada. The Welland Canal is one of Canada's greatest engineering marvels and one of our most important economic gateways. What passes through these locks, supports local jobs, strengthens supply chains, and helps Canadian businesses reach customers at home and around the world. Museum curator Kathleen Powell said the ceremony takes us back to the days of William Hamilton Merritt. He would have worn a top hat during the opening of the first Welland Canal in 1829, she said. A top hat such as this is symbolic of the growth of Canada, as development and settlement of our great country can be directly attributed to the fur trade and the trade in beaver pelts in particular. She said the ceremony is an opportunity to honor those people of our past, both Indigenous and settlers, who helped create the national commercial network of which the Welland Canal is a part. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Chuck Stevens, your reader. A 5-year jail sentence for a man who accidentally shot a friend's dog. A Thorold man, age 27, has been under court-ordered weapons prohibition. A Niagara man under a court-ordered weapons prohibition has received a 5-year custodial sentence after he accidentally shot a dog. Ask yourself this: was it worth it, arming yourself with a handgun for whatever reason, Judge Andrew Brown asked Anthony Agnoy in Ontario Court of Justice in St. Catharines on Friday. A gun is not a fashion statement. A gun is not a toy. Agnoy, 27, received a 5-year sentence after he pleaded guilty to charges of possession of a loaded firearm and possession of a weapon while prohibited. The thorough man was given credit for the amount of time he had spent in pre-sentence custody, which reduced his penitentiary sentence to 3.5 years. On January 4, 2025, court heard Niagara Regional Police responded to a call at an apartment building on Jepson Street in Niagara Falls and found a year-old husky suffering from a gunshot wound to her face. The dog was rushed to an emergency vet clinic in critical condition. Once the dog's condition was stabilized, she was transferred to an out-of-region clinic for further treatment and did survive her injuries. Court was told an investigation determined Agnoy had visited an acquaintance in the building who asked to see the handgun the offender had in his waistband. Agnoy pulled out the gun and a bullet dropped to the floor. When he reached down to pick it up, court heard the gun discharged and a bullet struck the dog in the face. Agnoy fled the scene on foot with the handgun. At the time of the incident, he was under 2 weapons prohibition orders. He was arrested 2 months later in Hamilton. The handgun was never recovered. The facts are concerning and, unfortunately, in this day and age, too common, the judge said. A handgun is a weapon that is meant to wound or kill or to intimidate. It also sometimes accidentally discharges, as is the case here. For no good reason, and certainly no lawful reason, he armed himself with a handgun. The judge also imposed a lifetime firearms ban. Next up, the region to unveil Jim Bradley's official portrait. The official portrait of Lake Niagara Region Chair Jim Bradley will be unveiled this week. Portraits of past chairs are traditionally installed in the Campbell West foyer just outside the council chamber. Bradley served as Niagara's 8th regional chair from 2018 until his death on September 26, 2025. Prior to serving as chair, Bradley represented St. Catharines in the provincial legislature for 41 years, holding several key cabinet appointments. Bradley began his political career on St. Catharines City Council in 1970, the year Niagara's regional government was introduced. Throughout his 55-year political career, Bradley was known for his civility, his deep respect for people at entry level of politics, and his ability to create consensus and cooperation, said a media release from the region. He was a tireless advocate of Niagara throughout his career. Residents are invited to the unveiling of his portrait at 5 p.m. Thursday, prior to the regularly scheduled council meeting. A brief ceremony will include remarks from Acting Chair Rob Foster and Region Chief Administrator Officer Ron Tripp. The chair is the head of the council and serves as the region's chief executive officer of the upper-tier municipality. Bradley served from 2018 to 2025. He was elected by his fellow councilors, as had been practice in filling the seat for the 2018 term. The province appointed him for the 2022 through 26 term. The most recent chair, Bob Gale, resigned after 84 days, December 18, 2025, to March 11, 2026, following his appointment by the provincial government to replace Bradley. He resigned shortly after revelations he owned a signed copy of Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. The region's first chair, John Campbell, was the longest-serving one from 1970 to 1985, following his initial appointment by the province in 1969 to get the structure running. He was followed by Wilbert Dick, 1985 through 91, Brian Merritt, 1991 through 97, Debbie Zimmerman, 1997 through 2003, Peter Partington from 2003 to 2010, Gary Burrows, 2010 through 2014, and Alan Caseland, 2014 through 2018, who were all elected by councilors. Our next article from the Niagara Falls Review: strong peak tourism season anticipated in Niagara Falls, World Cup and exchange rate favoring Americans at play, while keeping an eye on geopolitical tensions and high gas prices. Tourism stakeholders are expressing cautious optimism about strong summer visitation to Niagara Falls. We're looking forward to a strong season coming up because of our new experiences, like Niagara Takes Flight, said Niagara Parks Chief Executive Officer David Adams. We're adding some new elements to the Butterfly Conservatory. We have a new immersive and interactive experience in the pre-show area, and we'll have, of course, the FIFA Fan Zone. Niagara Takes Flight is a $25 million flying theater experience at Table Rock Center that opened late last August. It has exceeded expectations, building excitement about what it can achieve in its first full summer. Niagara is also expected to benefit from Toronto hosting some FIFA World Cup matches to celebrate Canada as one of the host nations, along with the United States and Mexico. Niagara Parks from mid-June to mid-July will turn the front lawn of Queen Victoria Place by Horseshoe Falls into a fan zone. The outdoor area will feature a licensed, covered patio with a stage, large viewing screens, and a mobile kitchen. Green space will feature themed activities and programs for children and families. We're going to keep that area set up for the rest of the summer, so it will be very much an interactive place where our guests can go and enjoy a tremendous view right in Queen Victoria Park, Adams said. Concerts and programs are expected to run through Labor Day. With the traditional bread and butter summer tourism season ahead, Adams said parks officials are looking at tour operators and sightseeing companies' advance bookings to forecast what visitation could look like. For Niagara Parks in 2025, we had double-digit growth in all our key international markets, so UK, Germany, France, South Korea, Japan, and we only dipped a little bit in terms of U.S. revenue. The U.S. is still a very important market to us, and we're still expecting a strong level of visitation from the U.S. Family Day weekend in February was very strong for Niagara Parks, and March break visitation is being reviewed. Then Easter is not far away. That's another benchmark. Then obviously the May long weekend. So all of these benchmark dates are important for us to analyze, he said. We had a relatively strong off-season this year. Obviously the numbers are smaller than prime season, but we've had growth, so that's good. Adams said political tensions have not had a negative impact on visitation. Although, he added, we don't fully know whether the increase that we saw at Niagara Parks with international visitation last year was a positive consequence of some of the geopolitical issues. So in other words, people looking at Canada as a safe and inviting international destination. And this year, well, there are some factors like the price of gas for those who might be doing the day trip and those kinds of things. But I think that we're all very optimistic about 2026. I would say many operators might use the term cautious optimism. Adam Stiles, Niagara Falls Tourism Interim President and CEO, said accommodation numbers for the past several months have been encouraging. It's shaping up to be a busy summer in Niagara Falls, with FIFA World Cup taking place in several major cities, all within a drive of Niagara Falls, and the closest being Toronto. We already know that Niagara Falls has strong brand recognition in most international markets, and many travelers will be adding a visit during their FIFA experience, he said. In addition to that, with new offerings like Niagara Takes Flight, it's the perfect time for repeat visitation with our domestic travelers. Stiles said Niagara Falls continues to be safe and welcoming as a destination, and that with the exchange rate still significantly more favorable for American travelers, it's a great time for them to take advantage. Niagara Falls is the #1 leisure travel destination in Canada and Ontario. We have some key market segments that are set to return this year and next that will continue to drive strong economic opportunity for the region, he said. Our full and diverse itineraries continue to be the strength of our tourism sector. There is something here for whatever type of trip that you may be looking for. Well, let's swing over to the opinion page on the Niagara Falls Review. Canada's role in Trump's conflict. Lloyd Axworthy writes this: every March, millions of fans set aside their better judgment and give themselves over to the chaos of a basketball tournament aptly called March Madness. Its charm is simple. Anything can happen. Underdogs from small colleges sometimes topple the giants. We watch, we wince, and we marvel. This year, the madness has spilled beyond the court onto far more dangerous territory. It has settled in the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, Lebanon, and the situation rooms of governments that were given no warning and no say in a war now reshaping the global order in real time. 4 weeks into Operation Epic Fury, the world is watching an escalation conceived by a small circle of older men in Washington, Tel Aviv, and Tehran. No one, including those who set it in motion, seems to know how it ends. The American president sends mixed signals from one day to the next. He rules out ground troops in the morning, then hints at winding things down the next. Meanwhile, the human toll keeps rising. Canada, like others, is being pulled in gradually. Pressure from Mar-a-Lago insists allies fall into line. European and Canadian ministers now speak in careful, non-committal terms about protecting freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, paired with assurances that they will avoid offensive action. What stands out most about this conflict is not its scale, but its lack of coherence. The Trump administration has offered what one analyst called a carousel of conflicting objectives: destroy Iran's nuclear capacity, remove its leadership, spark internal revolt, weaken its regional military reach. These are not variations of a single aim. They are separate wars being pursued at once under a single banner. Karl von Clausewitz warned that when war lacks a clear political purpose, it takes on a life of its own. Missions expand, timelines stretch. We've seen this pattern before in Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan. History, though, offers no other path. In the autumn of 1956, the world faced a crisis with familiar contours. Britain, France, and Israel launched a military operation to seize the Suez Canal from Egypt, setting off a confrontation that threatened to draw in the Cold War superpowers. Into that moment stepped Lester B. Pearson, Canada's Secretary of State for External Affairs. He understood Canada's role was not to choose sides, but to find a way forward. He proposed something new, an international peacekeeping force placed between the combatants, giving each side a way to step back without humiliation. The fighting stopped, and Pearson was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. His success rested not on force, but on credibility. Canada had stayed out of the Suez invasion. It was trusted by multiple sides, and it had a foreign minister with the imagination and drive to turn an idea into action. The comparison to today's is imperfect, as it always is. Still, the echo is hard to miss. Once again, the Western Alliance is straining under competing interests. Once again, a critical global waterway is at risk. Once again, there is a need for someone to help build an exit. What might a Pearson-style response look like in 2026? It would start with plain language. This war has no clear endgame, and the longer it continues, the higher the costs in lives, regional stability, and global economic health. Oman has already taken on a quiet role as a back channel between Tehran and Washington. Canada, along with the others, could shift from a military posture to a diplomatic one. None of this is simple. The UN Security Council is more gridlocked than it was in 1956. Canada's diplomatic reach is smaller than it once was. The multilateral institutions Pearson helped shape are under real strain. Still, difficulty is not a reason to stand still. The window for diplomacy narrows with each passing week of bombardment. Wars gather momentum. The longer this one continues without a political framework, the harder it will be to stop. Canada has a history of finding unexpected paths through other people's crisis. That instinct is needed again, urgently, and before the madness settles in for good. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Falls Review on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, you can grab our free app in your app store Just download that, log in, and you're good to go. Very easy to operate. From the opinion page, the Niagara Voices column, Springing Out of Winter Hibernation. Written by Joe Barkovich. First a howling blizzard woke us, then the rain came down to soak us, and now before the eye can focus, crocus. Licia Rogers. I'm sitting here at the window listening to birdsong while keyboarding the finishing touches to this column on March 20th, the spring equinox, the first day of astronomical spring. My Farmer's Almanac, the Canadian edition, tells me spring's official start came at 10:46 a.m. No signs of crocus here, but I'm glad to see early showings of tulips and daffodils. I waited for this day, also column deadline day incidentally, just to be able to say I started this piece in the dregs of last winter, and now here it is at long last, finished with spring's arrival. Surely my heart will spring with joy if I am to learn that the editor is appreciative of my dedication. Now, spring, don't get me wrong, I'm not digging up dirt on you with this, but surely you could have made your return in better conditions. A bright blue canopy overhead, glorious sunshine, and maybe a light warm breeze. What's with this moody, pouting, depressing, sullen sky, buckets and buckets of rain, and the chill in the air? Have you come as winter in disguise? You have been on my mind since the time change weekend, spring forward and fall back. Then TV meteorologists had me pumped early in the week with reminders of your arrival just days away. I poured a second Guinness on St. Paddy's Day just to toast your long-awaited return. Hope springs eternal. But sadly, this is turning out to be more an indoor spring cleaning day than outdoor spring walk in the garden day. And I've had a friendly reminder of the Mark Twain quote, "In the spring, I have counted 136 different kinds of weather inside of 24 hours. I've longed for your return because of my ties to the soil. I'm a small-time gardener who fancied big-sized plots earlier in life. The word spring jars me out of a hibernation of sorts. Just a couple of days ago, I caught my first spring gardening commercials on TV, and they were rejuvenating. No more talk about snowblowers, snow melt, salt, and snow shovels for another year. Good to see bags of fertilizer, topsoil, spades, and clippers, and images of colorful flowers in backyard gardens. So it's time to welcome spring, chirped the voice in one of those commercials. It's time to get out in the yard again." Oh, whoa there. So much for wistful thinking, but sadly, I can't see this happening just yet. I've done it countless times, even working sunrise to sunset now and then on the first or second day of spring, on more hospitable days, for a head start on things. It's exhilarating, it's life-affirming, it's doing something good for the world, and it's having a stake in Margaret Atwood's sentiment, "In spring, at the end of the day, you should smell like dirt." Yep, that's gardening any time, not just in spring. So the weather being what it was, I resigned myself to spending it reading. The arrival in the mail of a glorious spring flower catalog helped in that decision, as did the urge to brush up on gardening books cluttering the shelves. Most are my own purchases, but there are some that were gifted by friends. A History of Canadian Gardening from former colleague Wayne Campbell, and Old Roses from the locally acknowledged King of the Rose Garden, Joe Moxon, both now deceased. Mr. Moxon was my mentor. Long live my memories of the king. No spring chicken, I find myself ready for the start of another gardening season, in this, the autumn of my life, as found in a gardener's book of quotations. Old gardeners never die, they just spade away. All right, let's go over to the arts and living pages. One of the oldest structures in Niagara-on-the-Lake, protected with heritage designation. Kevin Werner reports, part of this Niagara-on-the-Lake home is said to have been standing before the British and Americans waged war more than 200 years ago. Now the town's Heritage Committee is moving ahead to designate the structure at 15506 Niagara River Parkway, also known as Depusier House. Located near Line 3 Road, it's already listed on the town's Municipal Heritage Register of Properties. This is a fabulous house, Heritage Committee Chair Drew Chapman said during its March 4th meeting. The older part is considered to have predated the War of 1812. It's definitely well worth putting on the list. Another member, Alexander Topp, said, "I don't think there is a property more steeped in history than this one." Town staff is scheduled to provide the report for designation to the committee in April. The two-story red brick structure facing the Niagara River incorporates a 1.5-story clapboard building. The clapboard component, estimated to have been built in 1793 through 94, is the heritage feature on the property and is one of the oldest surviving town buildings of the pre-war of 1812 era. The residence is representative of an early example of the Georgian architecture style in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Staff said Walter Butler Sheehan, an early loyalist and connected to Butler's Rangers, built the structure on the 120-hectare property. In 1799, Lieutenant General Joseph Genevieve de Poussier purchased the building and farm. De Poussier was born into French nobility and became a royalist military leader during the French Revolution, opposing the execution of King Louis XVI and leading a counter-revolutionary force in Brittany. After failing in his endeavor, he fled to England and looked to North America to establish a new life. In 1798, he led 41 French emigres to Upper Canada, founding a settlement known as Windham near present-day Richmond Hill. When the settlement struggled, he left and relocated to Niagara-on-the-Lake. He enlarged the house, planted orchards, and built several agricultural outbuildings. During the War of 1812, the house was used as a military hospital by British troops. De Poussier left Upper Canada in 1802 and never returned. He died in 1827, and his estate sold the house to Clark Gamble. From 1843 through 55, the property passed through many owners until Louis Scicluna acquired it in 1855. John Gale Dixon purchased the property and owned it from the 1870s to the 1880s. He constructed another residence on the property, now identified as 15618 Niagara River Parkway. In 1965, the house was nearly demolished for fire training, but Niagara Historical Society intervened and the structure was transferred to the Niagara Parks Commission. In 1967, a Toronto resident and descendant of de Poussier purchased the house, which had been relocated to McFarland Park for preservation, and paid to have it moved back to a 1-hectare portion of its original lot on a new foundation. The house was restored from 1967 to 1980, purchased by Richard and Nancy Merritt. In 1981, a 2-story brick addition was constructed, incorporating material salvaged from Rice Honeywell House in Prescott, Ontario. And the picture is just gorgeous, with the brick structure to the left, the clapboard structure to the right, and a beautiful piece of Niagara-on-the-Lake. Next up, the vacation rental blitz results in 37 fines in Niagara Falls. A targeted bylaw blitz over the March break to identify and address illegal vacation rental units in Niagara Falls has resulted in $37,000 in fines being issued. Municipal enforcement officers took formal action against about 50 properties suspected of operating as illegal rentals, said a City News release Monday. 25 properties have since come into compliance with bylaws, including one property that obtained a license and 24 that removed their short-term rental listings. The city issued 37 administrative monetary penalties amounting to $37,000. Municipal enforcement officers work directly with property owners to help them understand the rules and bring their properties into compliance, Chris Gallagher, manager of Municipal Enforcement and Security, said in the release. While education and voluntary compliance are always the preferred outcome, enforcement action is taken when necessary to address ongoing violations and to protect neighborhoods. The latest enforcement initiative builds upon similar actions taken by the city during peak tourism periods, including a Canada Day weekend blitz in 2025. Last week, bylaw officers used the city's administrative monetary penalty system that allows them to issue daily fines of $1,000 for illegal rentals. The approach provides a more efficient and effective alternative to court-based enforcement, said the release. Niagara Falls has been sharing educational information to help residents and property owners better understand short-term rental rules, most recently featured in the city's Straight from the Source video series. Bylaw officers will continue to monitor the remaining properties identified during the blitz and work with property owners toward compliance, taking further enforcement action if necessary. VRUs are only permitted in specific commercial and tourist zones in Niagara Falls, unless approved by City Council through a planning application, and must be licensed by the municipality. Residents who suspect an illegal rental unit is operating in their neighborhood can report concerns at service.niagarafalls.ca. From the Arts and Life page from the Niagara Falls Review, stay a while. A new winery aims to make Beamsville a destination. Written by John McTavish. A new winery on the Niagara Escarpment is hoping to change the way visitors experience Ontario wine country. Rather than making a quick stop before heading to Niagara-on-the-Lake, Alborgo Estates Winery wants to give wine lovers a reason to linger in Beamsville. At 3583 Zimmerman Road, Alborgo is the vision of entrepreneur Alessandro Spanini, who is also a part owner of the nearby winery Vienna Estates. Working alongside partner Joseph Panetta, Spassini has launched the winery with an ambitious plan, transform the area into a destination where visitors can spend an entire afternoon or even a weekend exploring local wines, food, and artisanal products. We want people to come here and stay, Spassiani said during an interview at the winery's newly opened tasting space. So many tours drive through Beamsville, taste one or two wines, and then spend most of their time in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Our goal is to create an anchor here, a place where visitors gather, relax, and experience what this region has to offer. The project is still in its early stages, but plans are expansive. Alborgo has already welcomed visitors for tastings, offering wine flights, glasses of wine, and light food, such as pizza and snacks. In the coming years, the site will grow into a much larger complex that includes a production facility, restaurant, event space, retail shop, and a collection of villas where guests can stay overnight. We want it to feel like a gathering place, Spassiani said, somewhere people can spend 2 or 3 hours enjoying wine, food, and conversation. The idea behind the winery's name reflects that vision. The word Borgo comes from Spassiani's other businesses, a furniture company, while the addition of Al evokes the Italian phrase meaning to the town. In Italy, you might say Alborgo, meaning you're going to the village, Spassiani said. We like the idea that people would come here as a destination, a little town where they gather. The winery's logo carries symbolic meaning as well. 3 arch-shaped forms resemble a bridge, representing connections between old and new worlds, partners in grape varieties. A straight line through the design symbolizes the path from tradition to innovation, while the circular arches represent new beginnings. Inside the tasting room, visitors will find comfortable seating and distinctive furniture pieces, many of which were designed by Spassini himself. His furniture company has produced pieces for major clients such as Google and Hard Rock Cafe, and some of those designs now appear throughout the winery space. Every piece here has a story, Spassiani said. Some of them were prototypes for restaurants or projects we've done elsewhere. We brought them here to create a relaxed cafe-style environment. But the most distinctive feature of Alborgo Estates Winery may be its grape varieties. In an unusual move for the region, Spassiani imported experimental vines from Italy, varieties not previously grown in Canada. The process was far from simple, because Canada and Italy lack a direct trade agreement for grapevine imports. The vines first had to be shipped to California, where they underwent extensive testing and quarantine procedures. From there, they were transported to Canada and further evaluated before planting. It took several years to get everything approved, Spaziani said. We started working on it in 2019, and the vines finally arrived in 2021. Among the new plantings is Sauvignon Ritos, an aromatic white grape similar to Sauvignon Blanc, but bred for cold climates and disease resistance. Another variety, Sorelli, is used to create a wine Spaziani calls Fioria di Vigna. The vines were developed in Europe with the goal of producing high-quality wine while reducing vulnerability to common vineyard diseases and harsh winter conditions. What attracted me to these vines was their resilience, Spaziani said. They can survive temperatures down to about minus 24 Celsius, which is very important in this climate. The vines were planted on roughly 2 acres each as part of what Spaziani described as an experiment. Brock University researchers have been assisting with monitoring the vineyard and studying how the grapes adapt to local conditions, he said. Brock University has been very supportive, he said. They've been studying the vines and helping us understand how they behave here. For Spaziani, the decision to plant new varieties was also about pushing boundaries. I like the idea of being one of the first, he said. When we started Vieni many years ago, we planted grapes like Aglianico that people said would never grow here, but we proved them wrong. Early results have been promising. The first wines made from the new plantings are already attracting attention for their bright aromas and crisp acidity. Alongside these experimental varieties, the wineries produce familiar Niagara favorites, including Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, Baco Noir, Vidal, Muscat, and sparkling wines. Spaziani emphasizes that the wines are designed to be approachable. We want wines that people enjoy drinking, he said, smooth, easy, with no harsh bitterness. Affordability is another key element of the winery's philosophy. I want people to pick up a bottle and take it home. Wine should be something people enjoy, not something they feel intimidated by. Beyond wine, Alborgo aims to showcase the broader agricultural community around Beansville. The winery is working to promote nearby artisans and producers, including honey farms, chocolatiers, lavender growers, and cheesemakers. There are so many incredible small businesses in this area that people don't know about. We want to help bring attention to them. Future plans include seasonal markets and festivals where local producers can sell their goods alongside the winery's offerings. Accommodation will also play a major role in the project's long-term vision. 11 villas have been constructed on the property, each designed as a self-contained suite with heated floors, kitchens, and living areas. The goal is to encourage visitors to stay in Beansville rather than simply pass through. Millions of people travel through this region every year, but historically they spend most of their time and their money elsewhere, and we want to change that. With its blend of innovation, hospitality, and community partnerships, Alborgo hopes to become a new focal point for wine tourism in Niagara. We're still at the beginning, Spaziani said, but we believe this place can become something special. From Canada and the world, from the Niagara Falls Review, warning system didn't sound before fatal crash, safety board says. A fire truck had been cleared to cross a runway at New York's LaGuardia Airport only 20 seconds before it collided with an Air Canada jet, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board said Tuesday in an update to its investigation into the final moments of the fatal flight. 2 Canadian pilots were killed in the collision with the truck on the runway Sunday night. Doug Brazy, the lead investigator, read out details from flight data and radio transmissions of the final 3 minutes of Flight AC 8646 from Montreal to the busy New York airport that showed overlapping issues with staffing and technology. Early details of the investigation described second-by-second decision-making inside the LaGuardia control tower as the Canadian pilots prepared to land. 9 seconds before the crash, the air traffic controller told the fire truck to stop. A second later, sounds depict the plane touching down on the runway, Brazy said. 4 seconds later, the tower once again called on the truck to stop. Jennifer Homendi, head of the safety board, said a runway warning system didn't sound an alarm before the collision. The system didn't work as intended because the fire truck did not have a transponder, she said. We have no indication there were transponders on any of the trucks, Homendi told a news conference. But there are transponders on other trucks at other airports across the nation. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is also taking part in the U.S.-led investigation. The pilots have been identified as Anton Forrest and Mackenzie Gunther, while Forrest lived in Cantu-du-Lac, Quebec, southwest of Montreal. Toronto College Seneca Polytechnic says Gunther graduated from its Honors Bachelor of Aviation Technology program in 2023. In a follow-up, Air Canada plane crash may add to travel fears, a psychologist says. After the fatal Air Canada plane collisions at a New York City airport Sunday, travelers may experience an initial spike in anxiety that for some could reinforce existing concerns about flying, one Canadian psychology expert says. 2 pilots were killed and 41 taken to hospital after an Air Canada jet carrying 72 passengers and 4 crew collided with a fire truck on a runway at LaGuardia Airport in New York City Sunday night. Flight AC 8646, operated by Air Canada express carrier Jazz Aviation, had arrived from Montreal Trudeau International Airport. Martin Antony, a professor and chair of Toronto Metropolitan University's psychology department, said people who are already fearful of flying may have those fears reinforced following the crash. I think for a lot of people, there may be some initial anxiety following an event like this, but it does tend to pass, said Anthony, who specializes in anxiety research. People who fear flying tend to pay much more attention to the plane crashes than they do the 10 million flights that take off and land safely for every plane that doesn't make it. Even if this doesn't cause a fear for people, it may help to maintain fears that people have. At Montreal's airport, Air Canada passenger Andrew Burke, who was traveling with his wife to Toronto, said he learned about the accident at LaGuardia when he was still home. My mom's traveling, but we haven't told her, he said on Monday. She's a nervous traveler. She would be scared. Burke said he wasn't afraid to fly after the crash. It is what it is, he said. I could have been driving and gotten into a car accident on the highway. Meanwhile, traveler Kevin Sullivan said he had been glued to the news all day after hearing about the crash and was feeling increasingly uneasy ahead of his own flight to John F. Kennedy International Airport, scheduled at 7:10 p.m. from Montreal. Honestly, I'm a bit nervous, he said. I've been watching coverage of the accident all day, and it feels like the more I learn about it, the more anxious I get. The videos are pretty terrible. The news, he added, has been hard to shake, especially the deaths of the 2 pilots. It's just really sad, he said. Anthony noted the crash isn't the only thing that may reinforce existing fears surrounding travel. This isn't the only event that is happening. There's lots of other things that potentially could lead to anxiety about traveling, just with all the different conflicts in the world, he said. This might be the sort of other thing contributing to a situation that some people are already kind of nervous about. Our next story, Pride Festival asks Ottawa to fill gap as corporate support wanes. Pride festivals are seeking $3 million annually from Ottawa to fill a funding gap left by corporations pulling back funding amid a backlash to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. We are seeing corporate sponsors pull back their investment into Pride. This can be for a multitude of reasons. DEI pullbacks, the tariffs, said Joseph Hoang, a director with Vancouver Pride. They are not coming to the table at the level that they used to be. This is why we are asking the federal government for this new funding. He was speaking Tuesday on Parliament Hill, joined by other executives who are seeking $9 million over 3 years to help 200 festivals maintain their operations. They are asking for funding to pay artists and logistic costs separate from rising security expenditures. Their request is separate from the $1.5 million Ottawa has already allocated for security costs, which groups have previously said is not enough to deal with an onslaught of violent threats they tie to far-right extremism. Leaders from across Canada argue pride parades and other programming at festivals celebrating LGBTQ people help to promote inclusion and boost tourism revenues. Last September, the Manitoba Pride Alliance and Steinbach Pride had to cancel its festival due to credible safety threats connected to far-right extremism in a conservative region of that province. Ferretti Canada Pride, an umbrella group for festivals, said at the time that organizers need more security funding as they are hoping that we don't get shot. On Tuesday, the head of Ottawa's festival said her teams cannot limit the growing number of attendees at festival events, but still must protect the public from very real concerns after tragedies like last year's Lapu Lapu Day event in Vancouver, where a vehicle plowed down a crowded street and killed 11 people. We're dealing with new guidelines around heavy vehicle mitigation in public streets, so making sure that we've got the correct infrastructure to dissuade and disallow any vehicles from entering high-dense populated areas, said Callie Metler, Executive Director of Fierté Capital Pride. Organizers for Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver festivals say together they generate $1.3 billion in economic activity each year, and they estimate smaller festivals create $700 million in GDP. Julie DeMarche, who chairs Timmins Pride in Northern Ontario, says these events are crucial for maintaining inclusion in smaller communities. She said groups like hers often provide social services outside of festival season that are otherwise lacking. Prides are especially important to help counter that hate in the world and really bring people together and talk about love, belonging, caring for community, and taking care of each other, she said. We often see that space as the first space that somebody ever feels safe in, that they can be themselves and identify as themselves. Pride festivals are facing more scrutiny in recent years amid organizational issues and parades being halted due to protests and logistical disputes. Fierté Capital Pride canceled its Ottawa parade last year after it was halted by a pro-Palestine group. In 2022, Montreal Pride made a last-minute cancellation to its parade, with blame exchanged between organizers, police, and volunteers. A decade ago, the Toronto Pride Parade was halted for a Black Lives Matter protest, but it resumed when organizers pledged to exclude police from the march. Kojo Modeste, Executive Director of Pride Toronto, didn't outline how organizers are planning to prevent problems for which they are seeking federal funds for. Pride will always be apolitical, but we create a platform for the 2S LGBTQ+ community that no other organizations do, he said, adding the festival brings in half the annual revenue for some businesses in the city's Church Street district.